I am challenging myself to read 13 books in just 1 month, and I'll be vlogging my thoughts on each book along the way. Hello fellow book lovers, my name is Annie. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a really lovely day. Today's video is my January TBR. I am so excited to share these books with you today because a lot of them are on my high priority TBR and I have been really wanting to read them. I also have some really fun vlogs planned for this month. I have 6 vlogs planned and I don't think I can do all of them in the short month that is February, but I will try. I will give it a good go and we will see what happens. I'm also participating in a readathon this month, which is Jante's Inferno, hosted by Jan Agaton. So that should be a really fun time too. You know as well as I do how difficult it can be to pick out your monthly TBR. So I make it a lot easier on myself by using StoryGraph. On their app, in the TBR section, they have a suggestion button. And when you click on it, it picks a bunch of books that you've added to your TBR list and gives you a reason for why it's picked it. So every time I buy a book, I add it to my StoryGraph TBR list. And that way, each month, I get a fully up-to-date TBR picked out for me without any stress, without getting overwhelmed. It's fantastic. I could sit and ramble on about things with you for ages, but there are so many books on this TBR for us to get to. So let's just dive straight in. So the first book is 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim, and this is a book that StoryGraph thinks that I am going to love. This is a YA fantasy following Shiori, a princess with secret forbidden magic. At her betrothal, why can't I say that? At her betrothal ceremony, Shiori accidentally reveals her magic, and as a punishment from her stepmother, she is exiled from her kingdom and her brothers are turned into cranes. I'm presuming she has 6 brothers. But the stepmother warns Shiori that if she tells a soul about what she has done, each brother will die with every word that passes her lips. Shiori then sets out in search of her brothers, and along the way she discovers a conspiracy to seize the throne. The second book was a randomly generated book, and that is The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. This book is actually on Prime Reading, which means it's free to Prime members. It's not my usual genre, but because it was free, I thought I would give it a go. This is an adult, cozy, magical fantasy book, and we are following Opaline. And we are following Opaline, Martha, and Henry. The synopsis is very vague for this one, but it follows a vanishing bookshop. I have very recently read a cozy magical realism book called The Vanishing Bookstore, so it'll be really interesting to compare the two once I have finished this one. StoryGraph says this one is for anyone who has found solace in the magic of books, and I think we can all fairly say that applies to us. The next book is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson, and StoryGraph picked this one out because it has been on my TBR the longest. I actually only bought this in August 2024, so even though it is the oldest on my TBR, it hasn't been there for very long. In 2024, I did a really good job of keeping up to date with the books that I was buying, so currently my backlist isn't the longest. I do already own a physical copy of this book. I saw it in my local independent bookshop and I was immediately drawn to it, and I did think I was gonna love it, so I guess this month we are gonna find out. This is an adult queer horror and it's only around 200 pages. We follow Rosemary, who sees Ash at a farmer's market and she is immediately enamored with her. She is torn between wanting to be her and wanting to be with her. But as her obsession grows, she realizes there is more to Ash than meets the eye. I think this one may be a 5-star read. The next book is Vasa in the Night by Sarah Porter, and StoryGraph picked this one because it features on one of my challenge lists. StoryGraph have a great feature where you can create and join challenges and then track all of the books that you have read towards that challenge. I have mentioned before that I am trying to read all of the books that have featured in book subscription boxes in order to venture out of my comfort zone and discover new favourites, and I am tracking this goal with StoryGraph. So this book was featured in a Fairy Loot box back in 2016, and it was also in a Owl Crate box back in 2016 too. One was in September, one was in October. So this book is ticking off 2 challenges at once. This is a YA fairy tale retelling which follows Vasa, who lives in a neighbourhood in Brooklyn, and their local corner shop is ran by Babs Yag, who is based on Baba Yaga. Vasa and her sentient wooden doll Erg decide to break the witch's curse and free the neighbourhood from Babs Yag. Hopefully this one will be a bit of good fun, and I have enjoyed YA retellings that I've read before. Next is Poison Study by Maria V. Schneider, which frustratingly I bought in December, only to now find out it's on KU and at my library. According to StoryGraph, this matches the mood and pace of other books that I have loved. I've put off buying this one for years because it feels too higher fantasy for me, but I guess it's time to find out. Set in a fictional place called Ixia, our main character Yelena is set to be executed for murder, but instead she is given a lifeline. She will be given a home at the palace and treated like royalty if she agrees to become a poison taster for the commander of Ixia. So she will taste the food before the commander in case there is an assassination attempt. As well as having this dangerous new job, rebellion is brewing in Ixia, and Yelena starts to develop magical powers that she can't control. This book is the first in a series, and although I'm really nervous about it, I am quite excited. Next is Ozma of Oz by L. Frank Baum, and this is the third in the Wizard of Oz series. Seeing as this is the third book, I can't really go into the synopsis, and I think all of us know what Wizard of Oz is about, but I started reading the series in December, and I'm hoping to get through all 14 books in 2025. StoryGraph picked this one out for me because it's from an author that I have previously enjoyed, and I did really enjoy the first two books in this series. They are children's books, they are really cozy, they are really whimsical, really fun. Then we have our only non-fiction book in this TBR, and it's I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jante McCurdy. I'm a little bit late to the hype on this one, but it recently became available at my library, so I thought I would pick it up. StoryGraph have said users with similar tastes to myself have read this and enjoyed it, but I feel like everyone has read this book and found it really impactful. This is following the former child actress Jante McCurdy, who I believe was in iCarly. I personally have never seen iCarly. I wasn't a Disney Channel or a Nickelodeon child, but I feel like that shouldn't matter going into this book. She is telling us about the abuse and the manipulation that she experienced as a child, both at the hands of the production company and also her mother. I think this is going to be really interesting, but also quite difficult and emotional to read. Next, and if you listen very carefully, you can hear my bank account wince, is Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. I read the prequel, The House in the Cerulean Sea, a few years ago, and I absolutely loved it. I was actually really nervous going into it because I'd never read a cozy magical fantasy before, but I was really pleasantly surprised. This book is the follow-up to this book, and if I am correct, I think there are going to be more books published. But the reason that my bank account is crying, because the last time I checked, this book on Kindle was £11.99. So the reason this book has come up on my TBR before I actually own it is because I have been adding sequels to series that I need to finish to my TBR to force myself to finish those books. Because if I wait for them to go on sale, I don't know how long that is going to be, and I don't want to leave series unfinished and unread, and I don't want to leave series unfinished. So by adding them to my TBR before I own them, it is forcing me to continue on in those series. So the first book is following a social worker who is sent out to an isolated house that is the home to some unruly magical children in order to assess the situation. This book is so cozy, it's so magical, it is so heartwarming. I had such a good time with it, and I really do love TJ Klune. I am really excited to revisit this world, despite the fact that it's costing me the same as 12 of the books I have bought this month. The next book StoryGraph picked for me is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and although at the time of filming I have not yet read this book, it is something I am planning on picking up before January is over. This was picked because it is one of the highest shelved books on my TBR, meaning lots of other people have read it too. So in spirit of that prompt, I have gone over to Goodreads and sorted it by the highest rating, and at the top of my list is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. So that is what I will be reading instead. The Hobbit is a very well-loved book. I tried reading this when I was 8 because my mum wanted me to, but like every budding rebellious emo kid, I refused. But now, dear mother, I am finally picking it up and giving it a go. I love the Lord of the Rings films. I have actually been watching them this week. My partner has never seen them, so I am rewatching them. She is watching them for the first time, and I feel like it is time. I feel ready to read the books. So I am starting with The Hobbit, and then hopefully I will then going to the Lord of the Rings books. So The Hobbit follows a mythical creature called Bilbo Baggins. He is a hobbit and he goes on an adventure with a chaotic bunch of dwarfs to reclaim their mountain home that has been taken from them by a big scary dragon. Then on the opposite end of the spectrum, StoryGraph has picked out my least shelved book, and that is Whispering Hollow by Rachel Burge. This is a middle grade horror, and I discovered it in January in the Kindle monthly deals where a bunch of books go down to 99p. I hadn't heard of it before that, but I saw it and I was immediately interested. This is a creepy atmospheric middle grade that follows Pippa, who discovers a dark, mysterious threat lurking in the forest around her granddad's cottage. I love middle grade horrors. They're usually really cozy and atmospheric and magical, and I absolutely love forest settings, so I had to pick this one up and I do think I'm gonna love it. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I am participating in Jante's Inferno, which is a 10-day readathon between the 6th and the 16th of February, hosted by Jan Agaton. And for this one, each book you read helps you escape one of the 7 layers of hell. I am slightly cheating with this and I am tripling up on some of the prompts because I have a huge TBR in February and I want to get to them all, but I also want to participate. So maybe I'm bending the rules a little bit, but I just want to join in and I want to have fun with it. So don't shout at me. So the first 3 prompts for the readathon are to betray your physical TBR, read a book with a dark cover, and a book that features violence. So I have chosen The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. My library has a copy of this, which fulfills the betraying my physical TBR prompt. This is a YA contemporary fantasy set in a forest, and as we have established, I love a forest, and we are following Winnie Wednesday. I love that name. I wish that was my name. Winnie was also the top contender for my little boy's name if he were to be a girl. It's such a lovely name. This book is set in Hemlock Grove, a town surrounded by a deadly forest, which is protected by ancient guardians called the Luminaries. Winnie is actually an exile from the Luminaries, and in order to restore her family's name, she decides to take part in the deadly hunter trials on her 16th birthday. But whilst training with her ex-best friend Jay, the pair discover a lurking threat in the forest that nobody sees coming. I keep seeing the other books in this series in Waterstones and the covers are beautiful, and I keep going to pick them up and then realising they're in a series, so I need to get to this book so I can get to the others. The next 3 prompts are a popular book, a book that features conflict, and a recent purchase, and I have chosen Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This book was really popular when I was a teenager, but I was a bit of a knob and I refused to read books that were aimed at my age group because I was far too intellectually superior for that, and I preferred adult books that were nuanced and explored the darker elements of human existence, like Lolita and Middlesex, and also the Anne Rice books, but I was like really young and I didn't understand them and I couldn't read them and I was just reading them for the sake of it. Because I was a twat. But now here I am at 26 reading middle grade books and YA fantasies about dragons and forests. Teenage Annie would hate me. Anyway, so Cinder is the first in a series of dystopian YA fairy tale retellings. So I think this one follows Cinderella as a cyborg. It sounds utterly ridiculous. I am willing to give it a go. I'm not that big into dystopian and futuristic settings, but I do want to read books that were hyped back in the day, so I am going to give this one a go and we will see what I think. The next couple of prompts are food or drink on the cover or in the title, and a 5-star prediction. So this one is a massive stretch and I should be disqualified for the audacity of even attempting it, but hey, fight me. I have picked Bitterthorn by Kat Dunn. My Kindle edition says Nero Awards on the cover, and Nero is a cafe that sells food and drink. Therefore, there is food and drink on the cover. I said it was a stretch. This is another book that has a forest in it, and that really excites me. So this book is set in a town called Blumwald that has a creepy forest with an evil witch in a castle living in it. Once every generation, the witch emerges from her castle to claim a companion, and once that companion is claimed, they are never seen again. We follow Mina, who is the daughter of a duke who is lonely and lost in her grief. She actually offers herself up to be the next companion companion, although she has no idea what awaits in store for her. She finds herself unraveling the truth of what happened to the companions that came before her. This is a YA LGBTQIA+ fantasy, and I am really excited for this one. As I've said, this is a 5-star prediction. The last prompt for this TBR, and the one you need to escape the 7th layer of hell, is to read any other book that does not double up for the prompts. So I have to read a 4th book, and I have chosen Bloom because it's already on my TBR. It's less than 200 pages, so hopefully I will be able to finish it within the 10 days. Wow, that is a hefty TBR, and I would put money on it that I will not finish all of these books in February, but who cares? I will try to read as many as possible, and inevitably I will pick up other books that are not on this TBR to fit them into vlogs that I have planned. So we will just see in my February wrap up what I ended up reading this month. I am most excited for Bloom, Whispering Hollow, and Bitter Thorn. These are all potential 5-star reads for me, so I can't wait to find out. Roll on February so I can get stuck into this immense TBR. So they are the 13 books that I am planning to read in February. There is quite a mix of, well, are there? Most of them are YA fantasy, but we do have some adult in there. We have a memoir, we have a middle grade, we have dystopian. We do have a bit of a mix in there. Let me know what you are planning to read in February. I love looking at other people's TBRs. I find them so interesting to know what other people are picking up, what are on other people's radars. So yeah, let me know down in the comments what you are planning to read in February. And please subscribe if you would like to see more of me. There are lots of other videos on this channel, so go and have a nosy if you are interested. And yeah, hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Happy reading, fellow book lovers.